Hey, I'm Josh Hawkins. Welcome to episode 105 of Opening Up the Gospels. In episode 104, we came to the end of Jesus' Perean ministry, the time period that Luke and John's Gospels narrate for us, stretching all the way from the fall of 28 into the spring of 29 AD. Almost 2 years have passed since Jesus began his public ministry by turning over the tables of the money changers in the temple, and so much more has happened. The gospel's been preached, the sick have been healed, storms have been calmed, multitudes have been fed, and even the dead have been raised. Jesus came to Israel seeking the fruits of repentance, and even after all the teaching he's done and the signs he's performed, all of the Jewish authorities and most of the people have refused to hear his message. Only a small remnant of them have repented and believed that Jesus is indeed their promised king who's going to sit on David's throne in Jerusalem and reign over the house of Jacob forever. Remember, Jesus' mission is in complete continuity with the story of the Old Testament. I've said it many times before throughout this series, but understanding the chronology of the Gospels is so important to understanding the mission that Jesus is on. Well, in today's episode, I want to look at what the Gospels narrate next in the chronology for us, and that's the raising of Lazarus from the dead. It's such a dramatic event, not only because someone who is dead for 4 days gets up out of the grave, but because of where and when it takes place. But before we look at the story in John 11, let's do a little bit of review. Recall that this entire period of Jesus' public ministry, the late Perean and Judean ministry, began with his final days in Capernaum and his departure for the Feast of Tabernacles in the fall of 28 AD, all the way back in Luke chapter 9. I showed back in episode 85 that Luke narrates Jesus journeying towards Jerusalem 3 times between Luke 9:51 and Luke 17:10. John's gospel fills in the gaps, so to speak, by talking about Jesus' activity in Jerusalem 3 separate times for the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Dedication, and the final Passover. Now take a look at these passages for a second. Luke 17:11 says that Jesus is heading back to Jerusalem, and as we'll see, this is where Luke begins to describe his final journey into the city before being crucified. If you remember, John 10:40 said that Jesus had withdrawn to Bethany beyond the Jordan, and then in John 11:54, Jesus goes to a place called Ephraim, and then a few verses later in John 12:1, we see that the Passover is at hand, and Jesus' crucifixion is just days away. So what we're going to look at today in John 11 takes place at some point before the final journey into Jerusalem. So let's read a little bit from John 11. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God might be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this he said to the disciples, Let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you're going there again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. After saying these things, he said to them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he meant taking rest in sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we may die with him. So John starts off by telling us a few things about Lazarus, that he was from the town of Bethany, and that it was his sister Mary who was the one who anointed Jesus with her expensive perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Now, this event doesn't happen until later in the chronology, and we'll look at it in John 12. But this story was something that early believers would have known because of how extravagant the act was. I'll talk more about that when we get to John 12. We met this same Mary and Martha back in episode 89 when we saw Jesus heading to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles. Jesus had likely lodged with them for the feast, which is probably how he got to know them well. Now, John says that the sisters had sent word to Jesus saying that their brother Lazarus, the one whom Jesus loved deeply, was ill. Jesus is likely still in or around Bethany beyond the Jordan at this point. But instead of heading toward Bethany to heal Lazarus, John says that he stayed 2 days longer where he was and dismissed the messenger from Mary and Martha by saying, "This illness does not lead to death, but is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God might be glorified through it." I think they would have naturally inferred that Lazarus was not going to die and that he would get well and that would glorify Jesus. But it's clear from the rest of the passage that Jesus had something else in mind. Truly, his power would be displayed in a miraculous way to confirm his identity as the Messiah, the Son of God. Now, when Jesus said he wanted to go back to Judea, specifically to Bethany, the disciples reminded him that last time he was near there in Jerusalem, they wanted to stone him. When was the last time he was there? Well, several months ago for the Feast of Dedication in December, where, according to John 10, they picked up stones to stone him in the temple. Despite the disciples' reservations, Jesus goes to Bethany to raise Lazarus from the dead and strengthen their faith once again. So let's read a little bit more from John 11. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live, and everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." So here's where this gets pretty crazy. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days, and Martha approaches Jesus with faith in her heart, confident in the promise from the prophets that God will anoint a final Davidic king and raise the dead from their graves on the last day. And Jesus affirms the fact that he is the one who not only embodies, but will bring to pass those promises. Martha again expresses her confidence that Jesus is that one, that he's the Christ, the Son of God, the final Davidic king who will reign forever. This is such a beautiful confession of faith, like Peter's back in Luke 9. In the midst of confusion and pain and misunderstanding and even death, the flower of faith blooms from its deeply watered roots. Now, the next part of the story you can read on your own, but it's where Jesus weeps with the sisters. Here, Jesus' humanity is so beautifully seen. He's not a stoic, flat-faced, emotionless man who just waves his hand and just heals people. He weeps with those who weep, and he mourns with those who mourn. At the same time that the perfection of his humanity is shining forth, the brilliance of his divinity radiates from him as he gives life and breath to a dead man. There are only 2 other times in the Gospels where Jesus is recorded as raising someone from the dead. Back in episode 66 with the widow's son in Nain, and then again in episode 71 with Jairus' daughter. Lazarus was wrapped up in grave clothes, and his body had already started to decompose and to stink. For Jesus to raise him is a big deal, and I'm sure he knew the implications and did it this way on purpose, knowing the statement that it would make. Because Bethany is right on the doorstep of Jerusalem, word of Lazarus' raising wouldn't take long to reach the Jewish authorities and the people there. And as we're about to see, they will most certainly react strongly. So let's keep going in John 11. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, Nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish. He did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. Jesus therefore no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness, to a town called Ephraim, and there he stayed with the disciples. So the message reaches Jerusalem, and the council gathers, and they say, "We haven't been able to put a stop to this thus far, and now this Lazarus thing is really getting too public. Too many people have seen it to deny it. So what are we going to do? I mean, if we let him go on, Rome is going to come and take away our power, and the whole system we have going on here is going to be shut down." John says it was from this point on that the Jewish authorities actively made plans to put Jesus to death. The event of Lazarus being raised from the dead is so significant in that it further incited the leaders of Israel to want to kill Jesus. Just think about the hardness of their hearts here. They acknowledged Lazarus really did come out of his tomb, and their response was not to rethink their views on Jesus. Like, they didn't say, "Hey, maybe we should reconsider what we've been saying about him." Instead, the raising just hardened them even more as they just clung to their power, their privilege, their money, and the control that Jesus was rightly due as the Messiah. Sure, the Jewish authorities believed that he was blaspheming, but at the end of the day, their motivation was that they didn't want to lose their power. But how crazy was that, right? Because they didn't even have power. Pilate and Rome were the ones with the real power, and the Jewish authorities were just like puppets. Well, we are out of time for this episode, but there's so many things to meditate on in this specific scene, so I would really encourage you to take some time to do just that. The raising of Lazarus is just a prelude to the resurrection of Jesus himself, as well as to the future resurrection of those with faith in him. We have a great hope that death will be no more if we continue in the faith and we don't harden our hearts like the Jewish authorities did. In the next episode, we're going to take a little bit more of a look at this scene and then follow Jesus to Ephraim with the 12. As always, you can find all the past episodes in this series on my website, www.joshuahawkins.com/gospels. God bless you, and I will see you next time.